The reason we have such a crisis in California is for one reason and one reason only. We have an enormous shortage of housing.
California is struggling to curb the homelessness crisis.
I've been on the street for about 9 years total now. Do I think I'm ever going to get off the street? No.
A day in the life, the harsh reality of what it's actually like to live on the streets in the Bay Area.
This place here, man, to be totally honest with you, really saved my life.
And a number of local programs are helping those in need. How Project HomeKey has already gotten thousands of homeless people off the streets. KTVU presents The Cost of California. Welcome to this KTVU special, Costs of California. We're diving deeper into four major topics: cost of living, education, the defund police movement, and homelessness. We're looking at them through the lens of the costs, the benefits, and an analysis of where your money is going. Today, our focus shifts to California's homelessness crisis. It's consistently one of, if not the top issue for people who live in this state, and continues to be one of the greatest challenges for lawmakers. In January 2020, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development conducted a point-in-time count and survey of people experiencing homelessness. In California, the number rose 7% to 161,548. That makes up 28% of the count nationwide. Keep in mind, these numbers are from before the pandemic and its impact on the economy. In addition, service providers and advocates believe HUD's methodology leads to undercounting. So let's take a closer look at what those numbers mean. According to HUD, of those experiencing homelessness in California, 70.4 were unsheltered, the highest percentage in the nation. California reported the largest number of unaccompanied youth in the nation at 36%, as well as accounting for the 31% of veterans experiencing homelessness in the U.S. Let's break down the numbers for 3 cities in the Bay Area. These are for point-in-time counts in 2019 and all increases from 17. In San Francisco, 8,035 people were experiencing homelessness. In Oakland, the number's 4,071. And in San Jose, the last count showed 6,097 homeless individuals. All of those cities and others have introduced their own solutions to housing and homelessness. Another reminder, that count is before COVID-19 and its debilitating impact on the economy. The biennial count was due to happen in January of this year, but like most things, the pandemic postponed those activities. The majority of Bay Area counties pushed back their point-in-time counts to 22, citing the risk of volunteers and unhoused people catching or spreading COVID-19.
Housing is health.
Libby Schaaf, San Francisco Mayor London Breed, and Governor Newsom joined the Biden administration for the launch of a new initiative called House America. The goal of the program is to move people experiencing homelessness to permanent, stable homes. Federal funding will go to cities to help them build affordable housing units. So what's in the new state budget to tackle homelessness? $12 billion total over the next 2 years. $5.8 billion towards Project HomeKey, a pandemic-born program to quickly house people in vacant apartments and hotels. $2 billion in aid to local governments and $1.75 billion to build affordable homes. Behind each of those numbers and figures is a person. Each individual experiencing homelessness has their own story, and we thought it was important to listen. Photojournalists Tony Hodrick and Chandler Landon introduce us to Robi Petticourt.
I wake up, okay, hop up. It depends on the day. You want some water? It's usually some variety of like kind of having to like leap into action kind of thing. This is the epic shoe hunt that occurs every day. Really? Bella! So today I'm getting up. I'm going to get a cup of coffee once the muzziness is over a little bit. I can decide what I'm going to do. Bella, there you go. I've been on the street for about 9 years total now. I grew up poor, and it was my big fear that I would be on the street. I worked from the time I was 11, you know, and I fell through the cracks, and it wasn't my doing at all. But once I was through those cracks, you know, I hit free fall, and I sure did stupid to keep myself down. People like me, I don't get food stamps, so I rely on white boxes and these food bags and stuff. Or dumpstering. You dive into some really foul stuff in search of the golden goose. But when you find like that secret spot, like, you know, that restaurant that's like, has a, you know, $120 steaks, and then you realize that they're throwing out 8 of them every night that are pre-cooked, and you know, to-go boxes because they you know, have these Uber orders that aren't filled. You know, you keep that to yourself. The truth of it is that, you know, I think homelessness gets associated with crime a lot more than what we actually do. I think we're very careful not to do, I mean, most of us are very careful not to break the law. Like, you know, if somebody's cold and they steal a sleeping bag, they're not stealing a sleeping bag, they're just taking a sleeping bag because they don't want to freeze to death, right? Thank you, Lifelong. You are truly the best and only outreach team that does anything in Berkeley. I'm lucky I've got resources in the community, and I'm a member of the community. I've been here for a long time, and I know a lot of people, so if I'm ever desperate, I've got people like you met with Sydney that I can be like, hey, I haven't eaten. Thank you. Yeah, people stop giving. People are more leery of contact. I think that people may feel compassion, but they're really standoffish. Do I think that I'm ever going to get off the street? No, I don't. Money's not everything, and we're not just enjoying a multi-million-dollar view out here for free and free rent and all this kind of stuff. The majority of us want to be off the streets. You guys have no idea how hard it is just to get through a day. You know, just to literally physically pick up your and move it around all day long, every single day. Just talk to people. You'd be surprised at what we do, you know.
So what are the clear contributing factors for our homelessness numbers? And what are the possible solutions? To answer those questions, I spoke to Dr. Margot Cashell, the director of UCSF Center for Vulnerable Populations.
Is that we have a disproportionate amount of homelessness. Despite what people think, it's not that troves of people move to California because it's such a great place to be homeless. That is a persistent myth, and it's wrong. The reason we have such a crisis in California is for one reason and one reason only. We have an enormous shortage of housing for our lowest income households. In fact, we're the second worst state in the nation on that statistic. We have only 24 units of housing that's available and affordable for every 100 extremely low-income households. That means we are a cool 1 million units short of affordable housing. It's like that cruel game, a cruel version of the game of musical chairs that you might have played as a child. We have 100 households competing for 24 units. Of course, some of them are going to spill out into homelessness. But it is actually the federal government that has the most power to end this crisis overnight. For instance, right now, only 1 in 4 households that meet the very strict criteria to need housing assistance get it. They just isn't enough. The federal government could decide tomorrow to change that so that everyone who qualifies receives it, and it would be a game changer in homelessness. It was music to my ears to hear Secretary Fudge stand up there and say that the federal government recognizes this problem, invests in this problem, and is going to follow the evidence. One of the things that House America said is that the solutions they're going to focus on are those backed by evidence. That's permanent housing offered through a housing first mechanism, which means that we do not demand sobriety, we do not demand, enrollment in mental health treatment. We start with the housing. Doesn't mean housing only. Those services are very much offered, but it means that you do not make unreasonable demands on people before they enter into housing.
As we move towards long-term solutions like House America and other projects, how important is it that we look at this through an equity frame?
Black communities are overrepresented by a factor of 3 or 4. Nationally, it's worse in San Francisco. In San Francisco, less than 5% of the population identifies as Black, and 37% of those who are homeless do. We cannot solve this problem through colorblind policies. We need to grapple head on with the racism that led to this.
What are the long-term solutions? Is there a long-term solution so that we may not just house people, but keep them housed?
If we actually had the housing stock and then appropriately offered services to support people to maintain that housing, we've got great evidence that we can succeed. What we've lacked all this time is not the evidence, but the political will to get to a solution.
It's a way to bring homeless people off the streets successfully who otherwise wouldn't come off the streets, and it's got a lot of longer-term potential.
Coming up, a closer look at a program born during the pandemic to get unsheltered people into rooms of their own. I'll show you more about Project HomeKey. Stay with us.
This is an order of magnitude investment into transforming the homeless crisis in the state of California.
That was Governor Newsom back in May announcing the state's investment to address homelessness, but no doubt there are challenges. The state auditor has been critical of the handling of the situation, including most recently concluding federal relief funds were not promptly distributed to benefit the unhoused population. A new program has already gotten thousands of homeless people off the streets in California, including here in the Bay Area. It's called HomeKey, where individuals, counties have the money to buy hotels and motels and convert them into housing. KTVU's Rob Roth visited one former motel on the peninsula and spoke with a resident there.
It was once just an inexpensive motel in Redwood City. Now one of the rooms is home to Gerald Sawyer. Actually, it's more than a home. It's a lifeline.
This place here, man, to be totally honest with you, really saved my life.
Sawyer's previous home was a broken-down Ford Taurus, which he lived out of for 2 years, parking it in San Francisco or Daly City. His possessions were whatever he could fit into the back seat.
Nice people was bringing lunches because I was so embarrassed to get outside the car from not showering. Yeah, this is my bathroom here.
Now Sawyer has his own shower and a bed and a door that closes and locks.
Like Beverly Hills, right?
He is one of about 70 homeless people staying at this old motel under a new federally funded program called HomeKey.
It's a way to bring homeless people off the streets successfully who otherwise wouldn't come off the streets, and it's got a lot of longer-term potential.
Bart Charlo is head of Samaritan House, a nonprofit organization that provides homeless services in San Mateo County. Samaritan has been managing the converted motel since it opened last March.
It's a very viable part of the solution to the homelessness problem.
San Mateo County bought the motel with HomeKey funds. Other Bay Area counties have taken similar steps, buying up old motels, hotels, or other buildings and filling them with people on the streets. The privacy also helps keep COVID from spreading. So far, more than 8,000 homeless people in California have taken part.
It's not a place where you're coming to party and hang out. There is true work being done here on a daily basis with our case managers focused on making sure these clients are actively working on getting employment, increasing their income, removing their barriers, and getting to housing.
Samaritan House is hoping to operate another similar facility in San Mateo County sometime within the next few months. Gerald Sawyer says his health has improved and he has a part-time job.
Coming here, man, it's like you can kind of find yourself.
In Redwood City, Rob Roth, KTVU, Fox 2 News.
The state has also launched a new program called Clean California. In short, more than $1 billion is being invested over the next few years to collect trash, clean up and transform spaces along highways, local roads, and transit centers. Ultimately, the hope is to work with Caltrans to hire more than 10,000 positions over the next 3 years to be part of the project.
Cleaning up our streets is obviously the first big step, Greg. That's what that's the start for this. But what we ultimately want to do is transform a lot of our public spaces. So to go from just a cleaning effort to places that we can beautify, to create places that people can feel a sense of pride of, that we can fully transform, is ultimately a big part of the goal.
2 months into the program, Caltrans says several cleanup events have been held and more than 500 job offers have been made. Even with millions spent on homelessness, there's still a cry among those who can't even afford to put food on the table. Major nonprofits have widely relied on donations to help bridge that gap. Our investigative reporter Brooks DeRose joins us now with a look at this massive effort.
While some government money and programs work to battle hunger, food banks are highly relied upon, especially since the pandemic. So let's look at how far your money goes here versus somewhere else. Check it out. A loaf of bread costs $4.59 in San Francisco. Compare that to $3.33 in Chicago and about $3 in Houston. No doubt you're paying a premium for food. Let's take 1 dozen eggs, $3.49 in the big city. But over on the East Coast in the Big Apple, they cost just $2.33. And down in Miami, $1.51. Many of those in need say it's their first time receiving help from a food bank, And here's why. A gallon of milk is $2.34 in San Francisco. That's compared to $1.83 in Denver and $1.57 in Phoenix. All of that extra cost has created a network of helping hands to keep people from starving. Packing up produce.
It's a huge amount.
Into 1,000 boxes.
It's overwhelming at times.
It typically happens 3 times a day. Right here at Second Harvest Food Bank of Silicon Valley, where the demand for food has reached new heights.
To me, it's heartbreaking. It's really heartbreaking that we have such an enriched area and we have got families that are in so much need for food.
Some on the brink of homelessness. With desperation so high, volunteers are racing to feed the growing need.
I love it. That's why I do it with passion.
500,000 people served every single month since the start of the pandemic.
We have not seen a great decline.
With no signs of slowing, Tracy Weatherby advocates for children and families to get nutritious food for free, leveraging government programs to make sure they have access to healthy meals.
Food is the first place that people can economize. They have to pay the rent, they have to do the child care so they can work.
She says most who rely on Second Harvest are working people, and 57% of clients say they have $100 or less in their savings, threatening their livelihood.
Food is the one place where we can help relieve people's budgets so that hopefully they can keep those other aspects of their lives working properly.
Many Californians needed help even before the pandemic. 1 in 5 considered food insecure. That's 8 million people statewide.
I know that my grandma, she does depend on them.
Michelle Lee volunteers and says seniors like her grandmother see each box as a lifeline, otherwise unable to find food.
It is dangerous for her to go out in the pandemic and go shopping. So getting these foods for free is like really nice for her.
Helping make ends meet, what she gets each week goes out just as fast as it comes in.
This is one of our 4 warehouses.
To pull it all off, roughly 200 volunteers a day at this San Jose warehouse alone, alongside groups like the National Guard and Conservation Corps, give their time packing, stacking, and wrapping.
It's really fulfilling.
Such a great satisfaction.
To help others.
And you kind of see how what you do goes far in the community. You get to see what you do and how far it reaches.
Knowing without all of this,
you would have more people on the streets, the kids. I don't know. I mean, that to me is almost incomprehensible. If this was not happening, how would you support this many people in the Bay Area?
Which is why 36 tractor trailers are rolling on each week, a mission to deliver and serve.
So we expect that this need will continue for the foreseeable future.
Keeping families from going hungry. In San Jose, Brooks Jarose, KTVU, Fox 2 News.
As part of the new budget, California has taken a huge step to stamp out child hunger by becoming the first state to offer free school meals for every child. That means 6.2 million public school children have the option to eat school meals for free, regardless of their family's income. As the Bay Area and the nation saw a drastic increase in child hunger over the pandemic, having kids back in school and all fed is a sign of progress for parents and volunteers.
About 16% of seniors, for example, in San Francisco live below the federal poverty line, which is about $13,000 a year.
Coming up after the break, keeping our most vulnerable population housed, the staggering statistics about seniors in poverty. Stay with us. A fixed income, cost of housing, medicine, help. Those are just some of the issues facing our seniors. Nationwide, 9% of seniors live in poverty. In California, the metrics are worse. 10% live in poverty here. But in the Bay Area, that number rises to 14% based on the federal poverty level.
The cost of living has just outstripped the benefits. The average benefit for Social Security in California is about $18,000 a year. And so that's about $1,500 a month. And I think anyone who is renting or living in the Bay Area can tell you that it's impossible to live on that amount without some kind of subsidy or additional support from family or somebody.
When you consider those situations, how at risk are seniors in California of becoming unhoused and facing other consequences or other outcomes?
I think seniors in California, in the Bay Area specifically, are extremely high, have an extremely high risk of experiencing homelessness. And that's because the cost of living is so high here. So about 16% of seniors, for example, in San Francisco live below the federal poverty line, which is about $13,000 a year. So you're basically making about $1,000 a month. There's nowhere to rent in San Francisco that would allow you to live on $1,000 a month and not be unhoused, unless you are receiving a subsidy or you have a very long-term rental unit with some rent control protections. But even there, it creeps up slowly, and eventually it just gets to the point where people are paying 70, 80, 90% of their 90% of their income on rent.
How can we prevent those situations where we see them become unhoused or face other outcomes? How do we help them? Are there solutions here? About 70% of all seniors spend more on medications than is allowed under the Medicare benefit. And so all of these seniors are struggling with the cost of medication. Additionally, there's the cost of just living life. If you're not able to take care of yourself anymore, you need to pay someone to come and help you. But you're not able to do that if you're living off of $1,000 or $1,500 a month. The cost is just simply too high. And what happens is you're not able to care for yourself, and it's very hard for you to maintain living independently. And then finally, we just really need to address housing. That would be an increase in subsidized housing for seniors. And also we see, particularly, for example, in San Francisco, the Department of Aging and Disability Services, for example, has a local subsidy, and it works similar to the federal subsidy. And for a few $100s a month, it can help seniors live in their housing. And a lot of jurisdictions nationwide are using this method of local subsidies to help people stay in their housing, just to drop that housing cost a little bit to enable them to maintain their housing and not experience homelessness.
We've heard a lot about the cost of housing and its role in the homelessness crisis. So we asked, what can $500,000 buy you in the Bay Area and different parts of the country? KTVU's Sal Castaneda takes us on a real estate tour.
It's nothing new. Bay Area housing prices encouraging people to weigh their options when it comes to buying a home outside the region or the state. Many people say they just can't afford to compete for the limited inventory. And then there are the inevitable bidding wars.
I think it's been normal for some time in terms of affordability in the Bay Area has been really tough on households looking to buy a home for the last decade.
In 2011, the median home price for an existing home in the Bay Area was $460,000. 10 years later, it's $1.3 million. Based on those numbers, buying a home for $500,000 seems next to impossible here, but plenty of Bay Area people are doing it somewhere else.
My name is Nicole Jones, and my husband and I bought a home in Florida for $500,000.
Nicole Jones says she and her husband found a nice single-family home near Tampa, which gave them what the Bay Area couldn't in terms of price.
Well, my husband and I, we looked for homes in the Bay Area for probably about 4 years. We were living in Oakland at the time. We pretty much knew Oakland was out of the question as much as we loved it.
In this pleasant suburb about 25 miles outside the city center, Jones and her husband purchased a 1,700 square foot home with 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms on nearly a quarter acre of land. In the Bay Area, this 1,000 square foot 3-bedroom, 1-bath home in Richmond was listed for $500,000 and ended up selling for $650,000. This 900 square foot 3-bed, 1-bath home in Richmond was listed originally for $488,000 and sold for $510,000. 1,800 miles away in Kansas City, this 4,600 square foot house with 5 bedrooms and 5 bathrooms in move-in ready condition sold for $403,000. In Austin, Texas, this 1,400 square foot house with 3 bedrooms and 2 baths on a large lot is listed for $499,000. In Boise, Idaho, this 2,200 square foot home is listed for $499,000 with 2.5 baths in a residential tract neighborhood. Back here in the Bay Area, even the list price isn't what you'll most likely buy it for. The San Francisco Bay Area leads the country in homes sold over the asking price. 7.5% of homes sold for 30% or more above the first list price in the first quarter of 2021, according to online real estate marketplace Zillow. As much as stories of people leaving are becoming common, Real estate experts don't think this trend will have any measurable effect on prices here. Realtor Jennifer Jones of the Grub Company says for everyone leaving, someone is right there to snatch up that home.
Yes, very true. It's like a parking space.
The pandemic has started a smaller exodus within the Bay Area, too.
What I've seen in my experience is people coming from San Francisco to the East Bay looking for the space, for the yards, for more room to work from home, have that extra space. So we're seeing a lot of that.
Nicole Jones says she and her husband tried doing that here, but couldn't.
We're working so hard. We're doing this hustle, and yet we can't buy anything, and we're almost in our mid-30s.
So while many say they could never think of leaving the Bay Area, others say it's a matter of quality of life. And for them, that quality of life is better somewhere else. In Oakland, Sal Castaneda, KTVU, Fox 2 News.
That's our show for today. Thanks for watching The Cost of California. You can watch all 4 episodes online. Be good to each other. Have a good day.